got as much of a head of steam around them as maybe some of the energy around stopping, like the Haringey HDB or overturning the mayor's guidance on estate demolition. There's been a lot of energy around that, and I think some of that energy needs to go towards solutions now. And I mean, Sian, you've probably got this campaign underway in action, or at least, if not in action, in your head already. But the one I would like to sort of flag up is Camley Street, because I've been following Camley Street as well. And actually, Christian Spencer Davies is somebody who's at the head of that campaign, and he came to talk to the students I teach at the University of East London just a couple of weeks ago, and he said, you know, they're ready to go, they've got the financing, it's hundreds of homes, it's a community-led plan, and Camden Council doesn't want to agree it. So at the end of the day, there are these solutions out there, communities are doing these things, but councils are not responding, you know, and so something has to give there. And, you know, until that does, then I can't see we're going to get as far as we should, you know. So that's where my frustration on the community-led housing lies. Actually, it's still being blocked.
I just wanted to say, like, yeah, one thing about Camley Street, which is, yes, they've got this amazing business plan, and what we had to do in Camden, you've got to do these things at the right time. What we had to do in Camden first was stop Camden doing the same thing as Haringey and putting all its sites into one big development vehicle. Now, they were behind Haringey in terms of the planning for this, but it was on a PowerPoint that I've got a secret copy. It's not a secret copy, I put it on the internet now. But I did get hold of a PowerPoint that was being presented to Labour councillors in a secret working group. And they had these 5 options for what to do next about their regeneration schemes. And top of the list, and clearly the favourite in all the little tables of pluses and minuses, was do a big joint venture with developers. So we spent most of this year stopping Camden from doing that, because that would have ruined Camley Street and all the other plans. And then in September they said they were not going to do that. So now we're in the stage where we're trying to get them to do more interesting things with each of the different... Some of Camley Street is not an estate. We're trying to get them to do not demolition on the estates that are still up for grabs, and there's lots of different things. For Camley Street, I think we are trying to persuade them to take the offer that they've had. I mean, essentially, the Camley Street, which is a neighbourhood forum as well, that's actually the structure they've used, they have made Camden essentially an offer, a decent offer for the land, and Camden is sort of now humming and hawing. And there will be a point at which we want to be, like, literally just bombarding them with phone calls and emails, and Christian will tell us when, I hope. So that's the thing to do with that. And I just think, I want to say, Eve's point was incredibly well made, that most of the people who you see elected to Parliament, to councils, are not paying that much attention. They're not experts in things. Even the ones who get to be the cabinet members, just like take whatever the officers give them and just like sign it, it's all fine. They genuinely aren't paying that much attention. So it doesn't take much effort as a campaigner, and this is, you know, I'm a politician now, but it's my job to make sure I do know these things. But when I started out, I was a campaigner. It didn't take much effort to get to be more knowledgeable than my local councillors, than my local MPs, on the particular issue where I was. And so you're already, you know, way ahead of everybody on the legislation that might underpin community-led housing, because they aren't that interested. And so it really does show that you can get to be successful simply by working out more than they know and pointing to the exact point at which they need to change their minds and give them the evidence that they need to change their minds. And with Camden, I think on Camley Street, we're quite close to that now. They really would be making a rational choice if they took this and let them set up their own trust.
Thank you. Okay, we've got half an hour left. Yes, gentlemen.
Yeah, the times they are changing, I think. This attack on social housing has been going on for 30 or 40 years, right to buy. There's large-scale voluntary transfers, and then the Housing and Planning Act of 2016. But I was in Ealing, and when they tried to push through the large-scale voluntary transfers, the sell-off of 19,000, we got a campaign together and we stopped them because we had an opportunity, because there was a ballot that legally had to have a ballot, and since we started winning in Ealing and Birmingham and stuff like that, they took the ballot off. So when the Mayor of London actually talked about there should be a ballot about any regeneration, I think that's a really good move forward. And the fact that he reluctantly did it, I think, is because of the pressure from below, and he's had to respond to that. Like all politicians, they put the finger up in the air and see which way the wind's blowing. But when Joe says about the language that they use is cosy, I think that gives us an indication that they're actually worried about us. Actually, if we get this, we're like a bee's nest, really, and there's a honey pot in there, and they want to come in and grab the honey pot. And actually, they're careful about how they do it. They put the smoke in there and the mirrors and stuff like that, and cover everything up, because they are worried that we'll come out and we will sting them. And I think that's what we have to learn, because it really angers me that when I hear all this stuff about the votes for women. They say women were given the votes. No, women were fought for the votes, and women gained the votes by standing up and fighting. And that's what we have got to come together, whether we're women or men or straight, gay, black or white, or whatever, and stuff like that. We've got to come together, because together we can sting the hell out of them. And I think the LDB in Haringey and elsewhere shows that things are changing. And I think Jeremy Corbyn is a lightning rod for that discontent in this country. And the thing is, we can't leave it up to a parliamentary battle. We have to build on the ground, in our communities, in our workplaces, in our colleges. Because we saw how the press, rounded on Jeremy Corbyn for 2 years, made him out to be a dangerous clown and stuff like that. That's nothing compared to when he gets closer to 10 Downing Street. They are going to really come in, and therefore I think if we're going to support him, we have to build on the ground. And it's great to have sort of meetings like this, and the one in Grenfell last Thursday, Justice of Grenfell, 200 people at the Maxilla Centre. People are saying, we can't leave it up to the experts. The experts have let us down. And, when you say, why are they doing it? They're doing it because of money and contempt for ordinary people. They do want a Paris solution. They want to make money out of it, and they want to clear us out to the suburbs, and they can, the rich bastards, whether we're in the church or not, just want to clear us out.
I mean, I didn't mean to sound sort of all doom and gloom. What I'm trying to do is warn people that unless you get involved, this is what is already happening, and unless people get involved and actually get a stake in this stuff, it will continue to happen, and there will come a tipping point where we won't be able to do anything at all, and it will be too late. So I mean, that's the message I want people to take from what I was saying. If you continue to, it's easy to just sit and criticise the whole time and say, that decision was outrageous and things like that. But unless you are out there trying to fight these decisions, unfortunately, you're just the biggest part of the problem. And it's as you say, we're the ones with all the power. I said this to Robert Thompson at the last scrutiny committee when he just sat there and basically acted as apologist for the council and their behaviour of late. I said to him at one point, you do realise, I said that no one on this side of the table is going to vote for you in May. And when it's everyone on that side of the table who's going to be voting for you. I said, so you want to start thinking about on what side your bread is buttered. Like that. And he looked at me like, what? And then he gave that outrageous interview to the Independent where he said, we're expecting the dead, we're expecting them to be able to raise the dead. And that's ridiculous for a man of the cloth to come out and say that. And I said it to him the day afterwards, because I wrote something on Facebook and he didn't like it, and he texted me and asked me to take it down. And I said, that's how I feel. I went, feel free to write a reply. And he was, no, I don't think that would be an idea. And then he rang me and I said it to him, so now you want to engage with the community, do you? I was like, you did want to engage last night because it was gone 10 o'clock and you wanted to go home. When you were talking about community engagement at that meeting, and there's a room full of the community here who want to engage, and you're like, no, it's 10 o'clock, we better go home. And it's that attitude. That's what I'm saying, that unless you constantly, that's why I was saying they should be afraid of us the whole time. Every politician in this country should really be sweating every election night, wondering whether they're going to get back in. There should be no such thing as a safe seat in this country. The only politicians who should have safe seats are the ones who represent the constituents. And that would be a society I would like to work towards. But as everyone, a few people have said here, there are certain hurdles that are in the way of that. And unfortunately, it's easy to get quite despondent at first, but these people never do. They're happy to sit there and wait, and they will just wear down your resilience, and then come back with the same proposal, just in a shinier packet. And that's what we need to be careful of.
In Haringey, I think.
Well, let's wait and see in Haringey. I mean, look, they won the first victory, so what will probably happen, and what I really fear does, what I really hope doesn't happen there, is that people think that's it, the battle is now won, and we can stop complaining and stop fighting and stop, keeping the spotlight on them and stop scrutinising them. Because the minute that happens, it seems, these people go back to form, and it will come out as something else. So it will be the Haringey Development Aircraft instead of vehicle next time, or whatever the hell they want to call it.
Can I sorry, yes. We're all going to say the same thing, aren't we? Which is, politicians are not an alien species. I'm a politician, and it doesn't mean, I was a campaigner, and I'm obviously, I'm a private renter who decided to go on about it a lot when I became a politician. It is the price of electing somebody in a representative democracy is kind of eternal vigilance, keeping an eye on them, holding their feet to the fire, and all that. But also, as a politician, one of the best things is, residents coming forwards with ready-made things for you to agree to. Can I just say that? Expert residents who've gone to the trouble of making their own plans, and you go, look, you give me the go-ahead, we'll organise this, we'll do this, this is all sorted. It's miles better than, if nothing's being suggested by the residents and you have to hire consultants to come up with, you know what I mean? It's, I think the best politicians want to be constantly involved in what residents are doing and are proposing and working with residents. It's not just, you don't sit there just handing down ideas. You are getting involved to represent your community, and people like Eve should be our councillors. That's the thing. You should stand for the council, and then don't forget your roots, because the ones that have are the ones that definitely deserve kicking out. But it doesn't mean it's inevitable and everyone ends up that way.
But of course, you're completely right, Sian. And there are a lot of politicians who are engaging with their constituents and representing them and doing what democratically elected politicians should do. But there are a lot who aren't. And, there are a lot who are more interested in meeting with lobbyists and developers and engaging in all sorts of
they should be kicked out
discussions.
Completely.
And I think it's a lot of them that, this meeting is obviously focusing on.
But it's
as
not,
well.
the thing is, it's not just about replacing the politicians with another set of politicians, it's literally about changing the nature of their relationship with you.
Absolutely. It's about enabling this sort of responsive democracy, and it's a structural, systemic change rather than a change of personnel, really, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
And then we'll take some more questions.
Yeah, I was just going to say about that relationship that you might have with a representative. The problem for me in that is that it makes this model, and we see it a lot in Westway, and we see it in we see it in those kind of bodies. Is that what happens is that the individual who's doing the representing or is in the job or whatever will go to this group separately, and this group separately, and this group separately. And what I'd really encourage us to think and to come and talk to me about starting Neighbourhood Fora is that we need to talk to each other. We'll have the better solution if we all talk to each other and the whole neighbourhood is involved. And if your neighbour is someone who can't be involved, that you make sure you talk to your neighbour and then come along and see. Because otherwise what you're going to do is you're going to put a person in a position where they're hearing conflicting needs or ideas or whatever, and they'll just pick a side. And people, a really skilled politician might not do that and would probably enter in it and set up something where you could... But the fact is that lots of people in these positions don't do that. They just pick a side, and they pick the one that's easiest, or they pick the one they're whipped for, or they pick the... There's lots of agendas there, and actually what we need to do is already have had the conversation before we go to the person with the sign-off power, and that's how we should treat them. That they're at the end point in a process which we have already developed together, and we've gone through that negotiation. That's why neighbourhood plans, etc., are so exciting from that perspective, because we do get to sit and think, about really from a local perspective, how to engage people. You know, I'm really with Joe in the sense of like, if there's a local campaign, I'm showing up for it usually, and I've usually got something to say, and I've got some. But I do know, I think about the people that I live next door to, and they're just not in a position for one reason or another, and all good reasons, that they can't come to every meeting. So. We have to make sure that we build processes that bring them in, and that we take responsibility for our neighbours. And when we think about, I'd love to live in a housing co-op and be responsible for every decision about my housing, but I don't think that's realistic for some people. So we have to make housing solutions that allow people to just pay a rent and live in a decent house. That's it. Yeah. So we have to really think about those things. And depending on the representative or elected people, those people to be able to, negotiate those complexities is, it's depending too much on them, and they, many of them have already showed themselves either incapable or indifferent to the task. So,
do you mind saying who you are first, if everyone, when they're making a point, do you mind saying who you are first?
I'm nobody in particular. I want to talk about the green shoots, because this estate demolition has been going on, or everything you're talking about, all over London for ages. Endless. There's always a campaign, always a Save Our Community campaign, but it hasn't sort of come together into anything. They nearly all lose. The Warrington Green campaign lost. So many people have disappeared over the years, and there does seem to be this, what you call, green shoot. Jeremy Corbyn coming out with, there must be a ballot. I heard two MPs, one Labour, one Conservative, talking on the Daily Politics about how any council or government-owned land must go to council housing. It must, like things coming along, but there's an incredible backlash under the heading of momentum takeover, and this sort of idea of a far-left takeover. It's hysterical and phenomenal, and on the phone-ins, on the radio, in the Standard and all, it's all there. And something about me, I'm part of a housing cooperative that got taken over in its early years by members of a far-left group who run it like a dictatorship. So I know this thing is there, but it's being used to be absolutely blown up to discredit all these green shoots. This meeting is under the heading of Greens, but your Labour, we've got a mix here. I think it's really important that all different parties say this is common sense, that it can't be portrayed as I don't know who Momentum are. I thought at one point there might be Quakers rather than but it's something that mustn't be allowed to be blown up to completely discredit really sensible ideas. And by the way, as far as I'm concerned, housing cooperatives don't do it. It doesn't work.
Take Anna quickly, and then we might have a right.
Yeah, just about the framing of all of these discussions. Who's the Evening Standard edited by?
Yes.
Well,
yes. Oh, I've read your book. Yes, very good.
Basically the media misframing of all of this as a hard left takeover is very much part of what actually has to be fought against.
Yes,
That's one of the biggest problems. Yeah, and of course, there is a grain of truth in it, in as much as in the early 80s, there were undemocratic processes in the Labour Party and hard left caucuses, and then in the later 80s there were undemocratic processes under Tony Blair, and there are dirty tricks in politics throughout. But this has got nothing to do with what's happening on London's housing estates. And I mean, as Sian said, you know, the coalition of people who fought off that HDV in Haringey, you know, had nothing to do. I mean, the Liberal Democrats were like leading people there. David Lammy, you know, was completely against it. David Lammy is about as far away from Momentum as you could possibly... Well, yeah, exactly. And it's the same as the sort of language around housing, which is so meaningless. The same media framing is equally meaningless. So yeah, we just have to, you know, say what a load of rubbish at every opportunity.
I just wanted to say one thing, which is that every loss is an education, and that has absolutely been the case in every community campaign that we've had. Every time we've had a loss, it's been an education how to move forward, and certainly that's how the developers act. If you take a planning application and it comes back with a no, they learn from that no very quickly. But we can do that same process. Like every single loss is an education. Every single failure of ours to make happen what we want to happen is an education, and we must see it as that. Otherwise, it's really easy to get buried in despondency. But every loss has been an education. That has been true for the library. It's been true in the community campaigns. And just.
Well, can I just say one more thing? I will not use the name social housing ever, because this is where the helplessness comes from.
Agreed. We have to think of something else.
We do.
Yeah.
And if I can just pick up on something you said and something Eve said, just about the importance of everyone coming together. I was involved very closely with one of the successful attempts to stop the third runway at Heathrow, which is now historic rather than current. And one of the things we did there was we had over 30 groups who opposed it, and we all used to meet in private. We all used to say what we were doing. We have a decentralised calendar. Lots of us were from opposite ends of the political spectrum, but we all had one goal in mind, and we would coordinate, and we would leave that meeting and we would go off, and I'd be a Green and someone else would be a Tory councillor, but we all were, it was as if we were all instruments, and we had a conductor, and the person who ran those amazing meetings was a conductor, and so the sound that we all went off and made came together, and for that campaign it won. And I think it would be great if we could do that again here. Maybe that's one of the actions we can take away from this meeting, is to get as many participants in campaign groups in this area to come together as possible.
This meeting has the best metaphors, can I just say? The bee's nest thing, and that's brilliant.
Anyway, let's try and get some more people in. Did you want to speak?
Yeah, hi, my name's Will, proudly far left. I was just going to say, I've got sort of 3 points or questions, so I'll try and be quick. But the thing about Haringey and how this is sort of a victory for people resisting social cleansing and resisting gentrification. I mean, it's important to remember that Claire Kober, after she stepped down from the leadership of Haringey Council, had all of the other Labour councils in London pretty much leaping to her defence, writing an open letter saying this is undemocratic by the NEC of the Labour Party, that she shouldn't have been forced into this. So, I think if we're hoping for Corbyn to sort of save us from social cleansing, he is still up against all of his local Labour councils, which are, as you pointed out, they're carrying out regeneration projects and estate demolitions across London. Okay, they are the worst for this. So he's going to, for that to change in the Labour Party, there needs to be something like a civil war in that party. I was going to say, since this is about sort of solutions, and I was reading some of your documents about the Green Party's policy. As I understand it, I'm trying to interpret what the solution is to who's going to build all the houses that are needed. You mentioned small community projects and small businesses. I don't know, and I'm not sure if this seems ambitious enough from where I'm sitting, that we need hundreds of thousands of homes built every year, and I don't see any other way besides a huge state-led house building programme. and I'm surprised that no one's mentioned socialism yet. Okay, socialism is good at building houses. I'm going to mention the example of Venezuela, which might be a bit controversial.
Listen, if you can't
Excuse me, I'm going to finish.
I just told him that.
Sorry,
you said don't do that.
I was going to mention the example of Venezuela. So since 2011, they've had a very ambitious house building program. They've met and exceeded targets of 300,000 houses per year. They want to build 2 million by 2020, and they've already got to about 1.7 million. Most of these are built by communes, which are community councils, which are subsidised by the government. More than half of the house building projects are led by communes, a system of democratic worker representative councils which have been fostered by the socialist state in Venezuela. But I think we need to think ambitiously about, you know, the fact that we've left house building in the hands of private companies for decades and decades, and it's been a disaster, and they're not doing anything even slightly to alleviate this. I don't see it as very ambitious to sort of hope to shake that up by handing it over to small businesses or community-led projects without a major...
Well, I mean, sorry, to answer your point, I mean, which Prime Minister in the post-war period built the most homes in this country? It was...
Harold Macmillan.
Yes, thank you, Macmillan, 57 to 66. You know, they were building, I think, something like 1 million a year at one point. You know, it can be done. Remember, it's not socialism, it's not conservatism. It's not capitalism that builds homes. Builders build homes. It's just who's going to commission them to do so. And frankly, I don't care what model it comes through. As long as it ends up with keys being handed to people and then being given homes and then paying rent and then a portion of that rent going to build more homes. You know, I really don't care under what system it is done. And it doesn't need to be done under any particular system in that respect. It just needs to be done. That's it, full stop. You know, it doesn't matter what political persuasion the party is that does this, or in what model they use to get this done. As long as they are building them as cheaply and as at high quality as possible, and are building as many of them as possible as they can every single year, you know, what's the problem? But it seems that there is an institutional reluctance.
I just think in the kind of contemporary political context, what political persuasion you're coming from is pretty important. You know, it's not the 50s and the 60s where Tory and Labour were arguing about who could build more homes, and the state council housing built, you know, 150,000 homes a year. Now we have like a Conservative government that essentially doesn't believe in any public housing, and a Labour government we're not quite sure where they're at. And I do take your point completely. We need a step change, and we haven't really discussed the step change. And I actually agree with you as well that I don't think community-led housing, while really good, I don't think it is that step change.
Why?
It just isn't enough. We really need to do something
just a little bit.
But let me just give you an example. Look at Zurich. So the municipality there in Zurich has said that all public land has to be used in joint venture with housing cooperatives. So that is a government venture with housing co-ops. If we were to say that Transport for London's public land all had to be used in tandem with housing co-ops, what a difference that would be. But instead, as I think Sian knows, Transport for London is looking at joint ventures with private developers. So those sorts of things, I think, would be more of a step change.
Yeah, that's really helpful. That's what I was going to say. I will challenge the fact that I said community-led housing and you heard small builders. Because that is not all. I've never said that word before. And I think community-led housing isn't the whole answer, but I think we need... I think we need to use as many models as we can that are outside of the market. And community-led housing is one, and it's one that can be done at scale, and people at the moment do not think it can be. But what Anna just said is another part of the picture as well, using public land, the ability of the public government or potentially Transport for London or the mayor to borrow enough to build, as Eve laid out in a very concise way, within 20 years you get your money back, you can borrow, you can pay back borrowing. So there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't have municipal, local government, and the local government's just restricted in its borrowing and has quite a lot of land. There's no reason why we shouldn't have, under all the different models, different layers of government using different bits of publicly owned land to build homes. What they instead insist on doing is taking land on which we already live, demolishing homes we already have, and doing that in conjunction with the private sector, which has no interest in building any more homes than it currently does, because that would bring down the prices. That we can use instead of, one of them is borrow, use public land and to build, and that is somewhere in the Green Party's policies, as well as community-led housing.
I'm going to do Eve, then I'm going to do David, and then I'm going to do Simon.
I think I would agree totally that we need a step change, but also, like, I live in a one-bedroom flat with my 2 children and my partner, and we've got no hope living anywhere else unless we do something ourselves. And my best friend is homeless and sofa surfing with a child. So while we might want to think, like, I do think it's really important that we're engaging on a macro level with policymakers and really trying to shift the conversation along. I think it's completely appropriate, and I don't know how to maintain, you know, just a level of sanity with my own housing situation if I am not taking it into my own hands in some way. So while I do recognise, like, a national need, like, my immediate need is so, and I'm not unusual, I'm sure, like so many people are experiencing overcrowding, experiencing, you know, lack of options, facing leaving your entire community and your family behind in order to live a realistic life for the children. I mean, you know, it's not humane, and I'm not waiting for the step change, and I don't think we should locally, although I would hope that any local action that we did take, and any houses that we build for ourselves, and any actions that we took in that way would be part of the step change, would be part of the argument for why it has to be different, and part of the movement forward. Although I do feel a tiny bit allergic about the idea of a mass programme decided on high, visited on local. You know, I feel completely allergic to that, because we've had that over and over again in this area, and what has it led to? You know, where are we now? So absolutely, it has to be from the ground up. It has to be from smaller to bigger. We have to work in networks rather than masses, and we have to, you know, we have to be allowed to take it into our own hands. We do.
David here, I'm in the Kensington Labour Party, and I'm a member of Momentum. I've waited a long time for this moment to arrive. I was born in the just after the war, and my parents moved into Basildon Newtown, a huge new town. They were one of the first families to move there. And as the town grew, one of 5 new towns that could be built in the post-war settlement, huge towns, everybody proud to be a council of tenants, proud of their identity, no stigma attached to being... Now, moving forward, we also tried very hard to get Eve to be a candidate in the May election, and she was elected, so she's available as a candidate. There has been a massive change, and I take all the points that people have been making about the sort of neoliberal Labour administrations in some of the boroughs. Yeah, but there has been a change. I was part of the challenge to the HDV in Haringey and various other campaigns to challenge those kinds of developments. Just to cut to the chase, so to speak, with the exception of councillors like Robert Thompson, who has said some reprehensible things, we're in a historic position against the tragedy of Grenfell to change this council, or at least for Labour councillors, maybe some other independents who can work with us, to have a massive, to create a massive change within the council. The National Labour Party policy is to build council houses. Obviously, you know, it's an uneven process, and Corbyn did say that in his conference speech, and has been saying it. The local policy here, in our manifesto, which you'll all get a copy of in the very near future, this month in fact, is that we're committed to building council houses in Kensington, and to follow the line that the approach that Eve's been making, and that is for co-design approaches to any kind of estate regeneration, in quotes, or redevelopment. So things have changed. And on the question of which political party is likely to make the most impact on housing, we know it's not the Tories. You know, we know that won't happen. We can see that in our own borough. I look out my kitchen window. So vote Labour in May.
Or Green. So I'm Sanya, I'm from the Green Party as well, and I would like to say I was born in socialist Yugoslavia, and I feel really ridiculous that at this day and age we still are scared to say the word socialism, let alone explore how many different types of socialism there is, how many countries have adopted elements of socialism successfully, and why can't we, when we are in this disparate situation, put forward some socialist ideas. So I was born in socialist Yugoslavia well, we bought a flat. We didn't buy it because there was no private property, obviously, but we got the flat through Macedonian Railways, where my mum has worked all her life. I think we all have to be a bit more loud and daring in what we're saying and how we're saying it, but in particular, our leaders, in both Labour, Jeremy Corbyn, as much as I do appreciate the socialists, and as much as I admire both our co-leaders and all of our politicians, I think we need to be a bit more brave and daring, because as Joe said, he's sitting there with these, frankly, emotionally disabled people on these boards, doing nothing, and we cannot expect that they will start doing something for us. And it's not going to be enough for us, all of us, to be in a co-op. There are solutions, state-imposed solutions, government-imposed solutions, just like that. Just as the Tory government could ask all the companies to do a levy for some crazy apprenticeship ideas that they wanted to push through just to get rid of further education in particular, they can also put forward a levy and say, well, actually, where is the money? That's always the best thing to follow, isn't it? Where is the money? Who made all the profit? That company or those individuals have to have a levy or some sort of an incentive, and they have to help out with this housing crisis and help the people out. We cannot expect those people on the boards and those people that haven't been doing anything to do anything. We need to be more bold and daring. And I do feel all of our leaders need to be much more loud, bold and daring in saying that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think houses are built for two reasons. One, either profit or for social need, really. And, you know, the tide has been with the marketeers, the profiteers and stuff like that. The times are changing. And I think the reason in Haringey that the whole debate in media is about momentum and stuff like that. One, is to have a go at Jeremy Corbyn. Two, as Anna said, not to address the issues. And three, is to disguise how the changes come about in Haringey. It is a grassroots movement. It is come from below. And that's the lesson we've got to learn, and that's the lesson that they're scared of. That's why they don't want to talk about it, you know? They don't want to talk about ordinary people coming together and discussing these issues and doing something about it. They're scared of us coming together, you know. That's why the cosy language. That's why, you know, they want to talk about women being given the vote rather than actually, you know, fighting for it and stuff like that. You know, it's us coming together. You know, we have the power. We are the many. They are the few. And that's the lesson we have got to learn, and that we can do it. But however, you know, people have been ground down over 20 or 30, 40 years, and so we can't expect them to actually, you know, just, you know, you wave the red flag and they all come out and right, here we go. You know, we've got to, actually try and get some victories like they're doing in Harrogate and then publicise that as far as possible. If you want a different world than the 30 or 40 years that we've had to put up with the market with Blair and Thatcher and everything like that, then this is the way to do it. And they're showing the way in Harrogate, and we've got to publicise it because the main media won't do it. We've got to do it on the ground.
Thank you. And just picking up on what Sani said about the need for radical solutions, my own personal solution, which is not Green Party policy, is that there's no reason for any more private developments to happen until we've housed people who need to be housed. It's quite simple. We've got our priorities upside down, and that's exactly.
So this is about solutions. You've got these, but you know, a lot of people are waiting for Corbyn to come in and he's going to be the great white house. By then, it's going to be too late. Half of these estates are gone. A lot of them are laying empty, waiting to be regenerated. Why can't something be done to house it? He's talking about 8,000 homes being built. They've got enough places empty for the homeless to go now. Why isn't he doing anything? Well, I mean, you can't speak on his behalf, but why is nothing being done?
Who's he?
Corbyn.
Oh, he's not in charge of anything yet.
No, that's what I'm
He is
saying.
and could do something about this.
This is what I'm saying, that he's actually been very silent about social cleansing.
Yes.
I mean, I'd
It's
probably
party
call myself
solidarity
a
because so
social.
many Labour councils are doing it, and now I think because people are standing up against, within a Labour council against the Labour leader, now we've
But we need a solution now
break.
before all of these are gone, and we haven't even gone into housing associations as well.
Yeah.
It's not just those, because apparently they're going to take over from a lot of councils, and housing associations are allowed to become private. So we've lost social housing there anyway. Do you know what I mean? So something's got to be put...
Jump in, sorry. He could do something. You know, in Harrogate, if he'd have come out and said we are totally against the regeneration and made a very clear statement, rather than say we'll get round the table and negotiate and stuff like that. If he does that, you know, that radicalisation that gave him almost 10 Downing Street actually would elevate him, because there is a mood out there that we want change, but we need someone to articulate that. And unfortunately, he's fudging it. You know, when he goes to Davos and warns the great and the good, when John McDonnell goes over there, who do you warn? Yeah, you warn your friends, not your. These are the enemies. These are the people that have been pushing austerity down our throat. That have been pushing down neoliberalism down our throat. These are the people who've been getting rich off our backs, and he's going over there and warning them. Well,
So what can we do about it? We can campaign, what do you think we can do about it? We need to do something now.
I think, okay, so maybe let's see if there are any more points from the audience. I'll just take more quickly, and then I'll come back for some great solutions and ideas from everyone. Yeah, we're going to wrap up at about 9:20, I think. So can I just take 2 more points from the audience, and then...
Yeah. It was actually reported in the Evening Standard already. We can, at the moment, supposedly there's about 50,000 people houseless in London. There's already 50,000 flats empty in central London. That's actually reported by the Evening Standard a few years ago. From what I gather, there's already a power in the councils that I think it used to be 6 months. If a flat is long-term empty, that they could actually take it over and then actually rent it out to somebody else. And then, yeah, exactly. But then that was actually with the Tories. That's actually 2 years, and only if people complain of antisocial behaviour. But it would be easy enough to actually bring it into legislation to actually, do it that way. But then, of course, it would take political will or maybe a massive change in, public policy to actually state, yes, we are going to take over these 50,000 flats that are laying empty at the moment as empty safety deposit boxes and give it to people. I mean, they can't even house the people of Grenfell. It's ridiculous.
They can, they just don't want to.
Yeah, exactly, they don't want to.
So the local housing market, no, you can't house people with Grenfell, but if you offer better state measures that do, you can house them. And one of the measures I think we should be demanding and asking for at every level is that compulsory purchase orders should be used against people with second homes. That should be available. We should be able to compulsory purchase, and we should be able to do it on the terms that we currently compulsory purchase when we're buying for estates, i.e. 40% of market value.
house.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that
Yeah, they
would
like
do is that would terrify the housing market. It would make the big developments that are currently sitting empty in Earls Court unthinkable, and they would make them unbettable on from a developer's perspective, and we would knacker the housing market. And until we are prepared to do that, until we are collectively prepared to do that, then we're in trouble. But I do think the whole thing of moving into a generation of renters, you haven't got that same sort of fear of the housing, the individual housing owner frightened of compulsory purchase powers. And it's something we should be demanding at every level. It's, at the moment, the compulsory purchase orders can only be done in specific circumstances, and they can't be used in the way that we want them to do. But you know, it's one very specific piece of legislation that could be it could be game changing for us.
I'm not actually talking about compulsory purchase order. I would support that idea. I mean, I know that there's a lot of people from, would you say tax dodgers, coming here, say from Cyprus, Greece, money from Singapore, coming to London to actually buy up flats, as you know, in order for them to actually go up in price 20%. So it's more precious than gold. But then for the council to be able to just take it over and say, okay, we will be renting this out, but we will be paying you council rent, which is £300 per month, hopefully. That would be great. and that's it. I know that would also probably put fear in the housing market, but it will be necessary. I know it's actually probably going to lower the GDP of the country. I don't really care because I wouldn't mind actually having my own place.
Thank you. Right, we're nearly out of time, but
I just wanted to bring up the housing associations, and could we not have some sort of policy in hand where they are not allowed to sell off voids? You know, in my house, the flat above me is empty and has been sold to a private developer. If something happens to me, they will sell my flat to a private developer. These are houses that were bought with a small amount of money from whoever started it, Paddington Churches Housing Association, public money, but it's a bit like Notting Hill Housing Trust, and they're just selling them off.
Charity.
They don't need to sell them off. They are already building massive properties for private as well, with the money, with the rent that I pay. The Genesis are massively in debt and have been for the last 10 years. So my rent is paying their debt. They don't do the cyclical repairs. They should not be allowed to sell the voids because they're not building more social properties, so they shouldn't be allowed to sell the ones they've got. So, I mean...
But can I just say, isn't it just the case that currently legislation impels them to do so, certainly in central London? If you want to oppose that, you have to oppose the Housing Act. And you have to take that up.
That's what we have to do.
Because at the moment, everything, all the legislation is geared to encourage the sell-off. And ironically, the one thing that you might think of as an oasis of possibility in the whole movement of housing associations from charities to private businesses is that private businesses can't be forced to sell off their housing, but currently councils can, and so can housing associations not. It's not straightforward and it's not enforced yet, but that's the direction of travel. In a way, that's why you want to move to a community land trust model, and you want to move to community-led models, because you need to move inside new legislative structures that don't allow that sell-off. But at the moment, while we've got right to buy, there's no opposition to that. There's no opposition to that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We're now going to have a couple of minutes from everyone on the panel to close, and if I could ask everyone to bear in mind what this woman to my right asked, which is what are the solutions now? Obviously a change of government will help, but we've got, how many more public spaces and potential homes are not going to be built, and what can we do now to try and improve the situation? Do you want to start?
I think that things have got immeasurably better than they were even, 6 months ago. Just the intervention of the NEC in the Haringey decision just can't be underestimated, and that surprise estate ballot guidance also can't be underestimated. But there are estates in there, as Sian pointed out, where the funding has already been allocated it's been stated that actually that will go ahead. And I think now what people who are concerned about the whole estate demolition agenda need to do is pile the campaign onto those cases where it's still in the balance and there's everything to play for. So Cressenham Gardens in Lambeth is one of the major ones of these, which could become like a really pivotal campaign. The Aylesbury estate, which is in the process of undergoing the second compulsory public inquiry into compulsory purchase, remains another really pivotal campaign. And also Robin Hood Gardens, where demolition has in fact started, but it's still quite limited, and you have this bizarre situation where the Victoria and Albert Museum has now bought up a 3-storey section of it, which they're going to put in their new museum in the V&A East. So I think there are a few key estates where campaigns could really coalesce around. And so in terms of what can be done now, that would be my suggestion.
Support the ones that can be saved for now.
The ones which can be saved,
right, okay.
Let's go and pile in on those ones. Just one sort of final closing point, just to come back to what you were saying about growing up in Yugoslavia. You know, it's no coincidence that we had really quite decent public housing in this country while the the Soviet bloc, East Europe, provided really good housing for its population. You know, we had to do the same. And actually, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the rise of neoliberalism and the destruction of council housing have all come together. So we are operating in a, you know, we've talked about operating in a micro and a macro context, but this is the really big context. And actually, this big context is really up for grabs. And it has been ever since the financial crisis. And what's been going on with Trump and Brexit is part of that much bigger picture. So actually, hopefully, you know, the people who are gathered here today in all sorts of meetings all around the country, and they're getting behind really big political changes. This is all part of a much bigger macro picture, which is going to stand really firm against the sort of Trumps of this world.
So yeah, I agree with Anna on that. Look, campaigning is all about helping to influence the decisions when they're made. And actually, when you're trying to do housing regeneration, trying to demolish homes, there's all these different stages you have to go through. So for the Haringey development vehicle, we're talking there about before any estates were really up for grabs, the deal being struck. And residents there, I think more crucial than the NEC intervention, because the NEC just kind of like tried to boss the council, whereas the residents brought a judicial review into the decision, and that really held it up in court because they couldn't sign the paperwork while that was still going on, and that really delayed it. And so, again, we're hoping for a change of government, we're hoping for all kinds of changes to the situation as far as councils borrowing and public land. Meanwhile, stop the things from going ahead, and that's why we're looking to try and stop Cressingham, where they've made the cabinet decision, but they haven't got planning permission yet. We can hold that up. They still haven't had their CPOs. There's loads of leaseholders there that will have to go through a public inquiry, informed by what's going on at the moment around the Aylesbury, where the last 8, I think it is, leaseholders are holding out and not letting their homes be taken away from them without going to court and it being
So what
proved.
he suggested was your local planning. Couldn't they use that and say, we don't want it? Could they use that law or not?
You have to understand all the different processes because there is...
It's too much.
But just like find out what the next decision is and how to stop that one. That's the thing, because there are lots of these decisions they all go through. Now, I think, you know, everybody around London who's got their estate under threat, their ears are pricked up at the moment. They realise that you can win these things, that there are ways to stop it. And I think we are starting to see residents... There is no kind of London-wide, even countrywide organisation of estate campaigners, because you're basically talking about people who would just want to live their lives, their homes, they don't want to be under threat. They're not doing it because they want to join a massive club of people who defend their homes. They'd just rather not have to. But they are.
Say there is a national group called Homes for All.
Yeah, no, there are. No, exactly. And I've brought people together at City Hall to share ideas. But the point is, they're not going to keep. It's not like a golf club. They're not going to keep doing it. Once they've won, they'll stop. And that's what people want to do. Once they've won, they also want to stop. So people are sharing their ideas and their tips and the strategies that have worked, and I think that's good. But also, I just want to keep saying that community involvement is really important. A diversity of models of how you run housing is important. Keeping as much when you come up with a new model, keeping the accountability, the transparency, all the things you didn't have before in the model is really important. And making sure that we've got lots of different models. Actually, we don't want all co-ops. We don't want all community-led housing. We don't want all council housing, because governments change and then they change back. And we don't want everything just stuck in one model. We want actually diversity, because therein lies security. So the more different things we can put forward while we've got the chance, while it's politically possible, better, I think.
Okay.
All I would say is for people who live in K&C, the thing to watch at the moment is the future of the TMO, which is currently being decided. There is a management committee meeting tomorrow at 6:30 at the town hall, when they'll be discussing the handback of services from the TMO to the council. And then the committee to watch at the council is the Housing and Property Committee, because apparently they will be the ones who will have overall oversight of this entire process. So we have an opportunity in K&C at the moment to get involved and ensure that whatever model is put in place is one that serves us and, doesn't become a TMO Mark II. So I'd urge everyone in the borough to get involved and ensure that and ensure that their voice is heard, and we come up with something that will really have a long-lasting positive legacy in this area.
Thank you.
So I would say, come and put your name on my list. So you can join me in a process of let's build neighbourhood plan processes. Let's organise ourselves into neighbourhood fora that span across the whole of North Kensington, and let's start to make development decisions for ourselves. If you're interested in trying to develop community housing, if you're in a position where you want to participate in that, then let me know. I recognise that it's not the only option, and it's not the solution to what is a national crisis and in some ways an international crisis. But we have to take the decisions that we can locally. We have to make sure that we are informed, and that when we don't wake up, as I feel like I sort of woke up in the summer recognising that in the midst of a crisis I didn't know how to house my neighbour, and that felt really. That's just the wrong position that we're in. We should all understand how to house ourselves. We should all be engaged in processes that make just this basic need that we have, which is for shelter, easy, not dominated by agendas that don't have our interests at heart.
You should stand for the council, though.
You should. I'd like to thank everyone who came. I'd like to give a special thank you to you for the action that I'm going to take away is to talk to Eve about arranging across, campaigns, meeting, and we will use the mailing list that we've collected to do that. And I'm just going to finish on a quote from Marion Wright Edelman. You just need to be a flea against injustice. Enough committed fleas biting strategically can make even the biggest dog uncomfortable and can transform even the biggest nation. So go away and bite someone.
Okay. Thank you for you all watching, and share this. Hopefully it will get watched even more afterwards.